they said, I thought the deductible, 3%, was applied towards the repair costs.
Yeah, it's a common misconception.
And I said, no, it is not. It is based on the stated limit for that building on the policy. Hello, my name is Negar Sharifi, and I'm joined by my long-term partner, Phil Masi. And you are joining us for Policy Party. In today's episode, we're going to bring up a topic that I actually had never gotten this question before until just last week during one of my renewals. And it is, how does a hurricane deductible work? Now, sure, people have asked me why there are different deductibles on a property policy, but they never actually asked me how the percentage deductible is applied. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to quickly run through an example of how a claim like that would work.
Oh, okay.
Sound good?
Yeah, no, it's something we've obviously had many of those claims that are processed over the last several years with all the storms that we've had. So, I mean, I guess for me, what I always try to start with people is some people that may be new to Florida or buying insurance in Florida for the first time, they've noticed this percentage deductible. If you go to other states, especially if you're not coastal in those other states, you don't see that as much. Now, I know a convective storm that's changed in parts of the country, but for the most part, a percentage deductible is unique in Florida that is tied to the wind deductible versus the fire or lightning or car drives in the building. Usually a flat 5,000, 10,000. People can wrap their head around that. They understand that. Pipe breaks. But when
and not per building, that one's usually just
per occurrence. So if you had one fire that burned 3 buildings down, it would just be one $5,000 deductible or whatever that all other perils deductible was. Where it gets a little trickier and more expensive is in these percentage deductibles for boards, because they can apply in numerous different ways, but they're much more expensive. So I guess an easy example is if you had a $10 million building. So let's just assume it's a $10 million single condo building. The deductibles we typically see in Florida are 5%, 3%, 2%, and 1%. Those typically. I mean, there is.
I haven't seen a 1 in a while.
I know. And again, we saw 7.5s and 10s in 2023, right? But generally, people watching this are going to have a 5, 3, or 2. That's the majority. So if you had a 5% deductible in a $10 million building, that's a $500,000 deductible. So you do 5% multiplied by the value the building's insured for. If you have a 3% deductible, that would be $300,000. If you had a 2% deductible, that would be $200,000.
So the question I got, which I answered it, and then they kept asking me if I was sure. And I've never even heard of this, so I don't know where they got it from. But they said, I thought the deductible, 3%, was applied towards the repair costs.
Yeah, it's a common misconception.
And I said, no, it is not. It is based on the stated limit for that building on the policy.
That's what the building's insured for. So people have a $10 million building. Let's say they have a $3 million loss. They may think they're paying 3% of the $3 million, not 3% of the 10, but you're paying 3% of the value the building's insured for. It does not matter. It's not a percentage of the loss. So let's just use that same example. Let's say you had a 3% deductible and a $10 million building and a $2 million wind loss, right? So in that scenario, you have a $2 million loss, but you have a 3% deductible on 10 million, that's 300,000. So instead of getting $2 million for your loss, you're going to get 1.7 million. The carrier is going to hold back that 300,000 and pay you 1.7 million. The association then is responsible to come up with the difference because you've got $2 million of damage, and how you come up with that difference is a whole
it could be a whole other episode.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you got operating funds. If you have a reserve fund, there's roof damage. You're pulling from that. You might have a line of credit or a loan with the bank, or the most popular, you're passing assessments. And in the state of Florida, every homeowner should have an HO6 policy. We've talked about that in prior episodes. There's something called loss assessment coverage, usually $2,000 at least. That's the minimum they require. Most carriers will only do the $2,000 multiplied by the number of units at the association. You can pass up to a $2,000 assessment that the homeowner's carrier would pay instead of them. And I know we've talked about that in prior episodes, but there's multiple ways you would pay for it. Now, to get a little more in the weeds on it, though, that's kind of the easy answer. But then when you look at these wind deductibles, there's different types of wind deductibles. So there's the wind and hail, which would be any wind and hail. So hail, storm issues, tropical storms, tornadoes, hurricanes. That's the worst one, because that means the percentage deductible applies to anything that's wind and hail.
Because you have typically 3 different categories of wind deductibles.
Yep.
The worst at the bottom,
which
most
is the wind
punitive,
and hail.
Is the wind hail. Yes.
And then named storm, which would be the next one, which is going to be tropical storms and hurricanes. And then the best is hurricane only. So if you have a hurricane deductible, then only time the percentage deductible applies is to a hurricane. And this makes a huge difference because I've had plenty of associations that had bad hail damage and
Yes.
damaged all the buildings. And,
Yes.
it was $3 million to replace the roofs and their deductible was only $5,000 versus it being,
That's like the best thing that could happen.
when you start adding up, what if
Yeah.
it was a 3% deductible and there's, $30 million of buildings? So that's important. And then the next level of it is it a per occurrence deductible or is it a calendar year deductible? And so if you have a hurricane or a named storm deductible that applies per occurrence, that means every storm that hits is a separate 3% or 5%, whatever
Right.
your deductible is. So that obviously can get expensive. We saw that in 2005, and then again multiple years. 2000 was in Milton, and the other one that came through. But you have storms crisscrossing and multiple storms impacting a property in a given year. So the best possible option is going to be a hurricane deductible at the lowest percentage you can get on a calendar year basis. That means it would be one aggregate annual hurricane deductible for the entire year instead of getting hit each time with a different deductible. Now remember, if you are coming up outside of storm season for your renewal, you're fine. If you happen to have a renewal like smack in the middle of storm season, one of the reasons that's problematic is that if you were, say, a September 1st renewal date and you get hit with a hurricane on October 1st of 2026 this year, and then get hit in August 1st of 2027, those are two separate calendar years.
Yeah.
So that does not aggregate for you like it would if your renewal was, say, May 1st and you went through the entire storm season. So renewing in storm season is bad for other reasons, but from a deductible perspective, that's another reason you want to try to avoid that.
Thank you, Phil. And there you have it. What is a hurricane deductible? How is it different from a wind hail deductible? And how is it applied? Thank you for joining us today. I'm Negar Sharifi. That's Phil Masi, and this is Policy Party.